Welcome in to another Running with the Timberwolves podcast on the Believe Sports Network. My name is Gabe Anderson, and I'm joined, as always, by Chris Emerson. Chris, how we doing?
We're doing great. We're doing good. Like I said last week, we're getting closer and closer to the basketball season, so that makes me happy. Let's see what we can do this year.
Yeah, I'm excited as well. Not sure the official count of how many days we are to the season starting, but if you know, let us know in the comments. Let us know how many days we are from the start of the NBA season. But we've been doing this player profile series. We did Nas Reed. You can go and listen to that on Spotify and Apple and on YouTube as well. We also did Rudy Gobert last week, and this week we're doing one of the newest additions to the Minnesota Timberwolves, Kentucky guard Rob Dillingham. So first off, just from watching him in the summer league, just pretty bare bones, what have you liked that you've seen out of Rob Dillingham, either in summer league or college? What have you seen on him so far?
Well, what I liked was his willingness to be a play distributor in summer league. Like I didn't know, I knew him as a scorer, and I knew that he was this instant kind of offense off the bench for Kentucky, but I wasn't sure if he was going to be able to run point. And who knows if he will, in real life, but in summer league he did. And, he had a lot of big assist games, and it looked like it was something that he was really working on, and maybe even forcing sometimes. So I was happy to see that. More than anything was just that his willingness to pass, and actually his creativity with passing, and his just raw ability to make passes that maybe some people, couldn't or don't make. And it kind of showed me that, he might have some chops to be an actual point guard as well.
Right. And that's why I think you saw Rob Dillingham almost struggle in the first couple summer league games because he was learning how to be kind of a point guard in Chris Finch's system a little bit, which is why you saw him struggle. And then you saw him the last game, I think, what was he, against the Magic, where he really went off, scored like 22 points, had a double. Just some facts here about Rob Dillingham. Averaged 15.2 points per game in college, 3.9 assists and 2.9 rebounds per game, was 44% from behind the arc, although struggled in summer league, only shot 30.8 from deep. And I think a lot of that was that last game, and 54% from the free throw line. Did average 7.6 assists per game, like you were talking about, with the distribution of the ball. But the downside of that, can be a high turnover guy because he does seem to like to be ball heavy and can tend to force the ball a little bit. Did average 3.4 turnovers per game. So what I saw in summer league was a guy trying to figure it out. I was a little worried about his, and we'll go into this a little bit, his size a little bit. And I was reading some of the NBA scouts, their analysis. Basically his downside is his size and basically being a defender and guarding bigger guards and getting shots up over bigger guards. Does that worry you at all?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Not maybe the shots off so much. I think he's always been fairly small, so he knows how to get his shots off. I mean, I'm not so worried about that, but for sure defensively, I will say that was something that I actually kind of liked in summer league, was his effort on defense looked like it was there. But he's 6'1" with like a 6'3" wingspan, and he's like 170 pounds. That's going to be tough in the NBA to be successful at any position, especially with everybody being bigger. With guard, there's point guards that are going to be like Luka Doncic size. So like, the size of some of these guys are going to be a real struggle for him. But, if his quickness can show more than it did in summer league, like there was also some talk that he was dealing with some ankle injury stuff. So, if he can be explosive and real side to side quick, like real, like his agility and his suddenness, maybe that'll negate some of the size issues, at least offensively. But yeah, his size is going to be a real issue, and we'll see. We'll see what that ends up being. Once I'm gonna definitely focus on that in the preseason games.
So let me go into what NBADraftNet.com said about Rob Dillingham. This is obviously before the summer league, so just basically raw what they saw out of the kid. So it said a shifty bucket getter that scores in bunches. I think that's true. Streaky shooter who only needs one shot to go in to become a microwave scorer. And this is what I really loved. Very good at playing a two-man pick and roll game. Well, when you have one of the best screeners in the league, like Rudy Gobert, that sounds pretty enticing. Like if you put Rudy in a little bit second unit and let him set some screens and let this guy get free and play create a little bit, that's exciting to me. That's exciting.
Well, even Rudy for sure is going to be a huge asset to him. But I mean, to have Karl Anthony Towns and Naz Reid also as bigs that can pick and pop, pick and roll, I mean, that's going to be huge for him. I think in college he had a 2-to-1 assist to turnover ratio, but he wasn't much of a passer. So I mean, I'm excited to see how he is on that level. But like you were saying, he's not. I don't know how much he's going to be asked to be a pure point guard come
I don't
actual NBA. Like he might, be allowed to get right to his bag, right to his scoring chops. So I'm just excited to see what he turns out to be. And what people have to realize, he's still 19 years old.
Right.
So we're talking about how small he is, but it's not unheard of for him to maybe, pick up an inch or two in the next year or two. And, if he ends up being 6'3" with a 6'6" wingspan instead of 6'1" with a 6'3" wingspan, that kind of puts him in a pretty solid defensive and offensive size for the point guard position. So there's still some growth there, but that might not help us, year one.
And although I will push back on that a little bit because I do think the move of getting Rob Dillingham and Terrence Shannon Jr. is to get some scoring off the bench in year one. Like obviously it's a long-term play to get Anthony Edwards some scoring help off the bench, which the Wolves last season, and there's another point I wanted to bring up, were 21st in bench scoring, 32.3 points per game. And the big stats, Naz Reid was 41% of the bench scoring. So he did more than his share of the heavy lifting. So I've said this before in the podcast, but I'll say it right now. If I think that Terrence Shannon Jr. was the insurance policy for Rob Dillingham, because I really think that we just need one of them to hit and we'll be pretty successful going forward. We need one guy to come off the bench and score, because if we can have 7 deep and just scatter some guys around him, I think that's a pretty good formula for success.
For sure. And I mean, it's kind of crazy to think that where we're at as a franchise, we're relying on these rookies, but we kind of are. Like, we know what we're going to get out of Rudy Gobert. Like, that's pretty locked, set in stone. Same with Karl Anthony Towns. I mean, they're veterans. They've been around. Nothing's really going to, they're not going to add a huge skill set. Anthony Edwards is going to keep moving up, slightly, but I mean, he's at such a high level, to expect a huge jump is kind of maybe a little bit of a reach. So now we're down to like the pieces we're adding. And, Dillingham is the guy that we need to step up, or like you said, Terrence Shannon. Tim Connolly has done a masterful job filling the holes we need. We needed rebounding and rim defense. He goes out and he gets Rudy Gobert. We need a shifty score first microwave score. He gets the best one of those probably in the draft. He's really pulled the pieces. Now we just got to see if those pieces can actually deliver.
And I wanted to go over some of the NBA.com draft comparisons, or just the draft comparisons from different websites. I found a few of them. NBADraft.net, which I mentioned earlier, I read some of the accolades that they had. Brandon Jennings and Kemba Walker was their draft day comparison. Bleacher Report says Darius Garland, and these are their comments on him. Scouts see multiple potential outcomes. Either a scoring lead ball handler, a combo guard at the 2 spot, or a 6-man bench spark. which sounds like exactly what you need, which is weird coming from a team who just had the sixth man of the year. But if you can turn that six-man spot into a seventh-man spot and have Naz Reid and Rob Dillingham as two, or Terrence Shannon Jr. as two scoring options off the bench, I mean, we're going to be lethal.
Yeah, I mean, it's exciting. The pieces, like we said, the pieces are there. Dillingham has it. And what I like the most about Dillingham, or maybe not the most, but what I really like about him is the six-man role or the off the bench role isn't new to him. I mean,
Right.
he did that the whole year in Kentucky. So coming in the middle of the game and being hot right away, which was kind of like Naz Reid's superpower last year, is a huge asset to have. Like a lot of guys that have always been the lead dog, from high school all the way through college. And then when they hit the pros and they're asked to, maybe play inconsistent minutes or, come in the middle of a quarter and be impactful. It's a hard role for them to step into. That's not going to be the case for Dillingham. He's going to be able to step into this role and he's going to be comfortable in it and hopefully excel right from day one.
I agree. And let me give you another guy who came off the bench for the Kentucky Wildcats and turned into a pretty good player. How about a Devin Booker?
Right.
He did the exact same thing.
I would love it. I would love if we get that sort of impact. That's for sure.
And I love that he was interviewed when he was in Kentucky early on, when he found out he was going to be coming off the bench. And I loved his answer. He basically said, hey, I love my guys. I'm actually very happy for the guys in front of me. And then he said he wants to make an impact when his name is called, which is exactly the kind of attitude you need going into a team that went to the Western Conference Finals this year. Now, if you're coming in to, let's give an example, a team like let's say the Washington Wizards, right? You're coming in there, you're expecting, hey, I'm going to be the lead guy. I'm going to get the ball in my hands a lot, which would be good for the Wizards because it keeps the ball in the hands of Jordan Poole. But you're expecting, hey, I'm gonna be ball dominant. This is gonna be my team. We're gonna win 15 games, and I'm gonna put up 25 points a game. That's not the role he's stepping into, and that's honestly not the role that he had at Kentucky. So, and as we know, Coach Calipari, who's obviously not there anymore, but he has a pretty good track record of grinding out good guards. Like you got Tyler Hero, you got Devin Booker, and the list goes on and on and on. And that's honestly, and I'll get to you in a minute, but that's honestly what I love about Coach Calipari. Obviously, they had the bad run in the NCAA tournament where they lost to Michigan, or not Michigan, Oakland in Michigan. But I've always loved John Calipari. His goal of being a NCAA coach has always been, and he's been straight up about this, I want to get elite prospects the best opportunity to go to the NBA. And
he does. That's what he does. He gets them ready. He gets them ready for the league. And I mean, it's been successful. And like you said, there's a laundry list of 15 guards that, are high level NBA players that, maybe struggled a little bit in college and have now stepped up. So, yeah, I mean, it's exciting. This kid's exciting. Like we said, the only real scary thing is his pure size.
Yep.
But, with the space that the NBA provides, he should, be able to find that space and be effective. I mean, there's guys like Trae Young or even Darius Garland, like they said, that are tiny guys that, are putting up huge numbers and making huge impacts. So if we can get half of what those guys can do this year off the bench, I mean, that would be a huge role player for us that would push us, even further in the playoffs.
Yeah, and I like what hoopshype.com, they were talking to an NBA executive, and this is what he said. He's going about Dillingham. He's going to come off the bench, change the pace of the game, and score the ball. You'd hope he can outscore the guy he's guarding, which I think that's a pretty fair assessment because he'll try on for me, defensively, it would be kind of like how Malik Beasley said he wants to be the defensive player of the year. We know it's never going to happen, but at least he's putting in the effort. If he can just put in effort on defense and be like a 10 points a game guy, basically be an upgrade from Jalen Noel, which I don't think we've had a scorer like that. I mean, we've had Naz Reid, but we haven't had a guard scorer off the bench since Jalen Noel, which isn't a very high bar. But if he could be much better than that, I think we got a keeper here.
Yeah, I mean, there was times last year, and I was if you've been following this pod for a while, like I was a pretty hard critic for Jalen Noel his whole career as a Timberwolf. But saying that, the skill set of a guy that when he gets the ball, he's looking to score first and second is something that we needed last year. And it was a drastic issue in multiple games last year where when Anthony Edwards left the game and the bench team was in, you would see the ball bounce around and nobody looked like they were willing to take a shot. And we need somebody who's willing to take that shot and willing to drive the ball, willing to get into the teeth of the defense. And even if it isn't successful, just that action makes other actions happen, which can be successful for the team. So, I mean, as an athletic piece, as a basketball piece, as a piece to the puzzle, he fits perfectly. We didn't have that quick twitch that, get to the basket that makes somebody, kind of backpedal, be on their heels as a ball handler guy other than Anthony Edwards on our entire roster. We had a lot of size. We had a lot of, vets that knew what to do, but we didn't have that explosiveness. And with Terrence Shannon and with Dillingham, we added, first step explosiveness. We added aggression. And that was just something that we didn't have on this team. So it's going to be huge to see what Chris Finch can do with that kind of those kind of athletes.
A little bit of background about where Rob Dillingham is coming from. He's from the Charlotte, North Carolina area, was named as a sophomore, which is pretty impressive. The Charlotte Observer Player of the Year, transferred his junior year to Donda Academy, Kanye West's school in California. And then he transferred basically playing AAU ball with Overtime Elite in Atlanta, Georgia. So elite basketball all the way through. Didn't really go the traditional college basketball route, but that's what a lot of guys are doing. Now, I found this kind of
let me touch on that real quick.
Go ahead.
So what's interesting again to me with that, just like the 6th man of the year stuff, like you talk about these young kids, he's 19. So you talk about these kids getting used to the NBA lifestyle being such a struggle, getting used to being on the road, flying here and there. Like this kid's been doing that, like he went from the far East Coast to the far West Coast to Atlanta to Kentucky. Like he's been everywhere. He's been playing at high level stuff. He's been playing like, almost like a professional lifestyle of basketball for years now. So a lot of this isn't going to be a huge shock to him. So, I mean, these sort of things are all skill sets that he has already in his bag that a lot of younger players don't have and maybe will never get. So, those sort of things that are non-basketball related sometimes affect the basketball game. And it's nice that he's at least has those skill sets already.
And this is actually kind of, it's crazy to think about this, but he originally, obviously he only spent 1 year at Kentucky.
Yeah.
He originally committed to North Carolina State and was their highest ranked recruit, was a 5-star recruit since Dennis Smith Jr. at NC State. And what's crazy to think about is we know the run that North Carolina State went on in the NCAA tournament, even without him, went to the Final Four. Imagine maybe they win. I mean, UConn was a great team, but they got a better shot at winning the whole thing if they have Rob Dillingham. And he definitely starts at North Carolina or North Carolina State, no doubt.
Right. No, it would be fun. I mean, I can't wait. I can't wait for this season. It's very rare for a team to go to the Western Conference Finals and then add such a dynamic piece, a top 10 draft pick. I mean, that just doesn't happen. So it's a very It's a very rare situation the Timberwolves find themselves in, and something amazing that can happen when you quote unquote don't have any draft picks for the extended future, and then poof, all of a sudden you've got a top 10 pick. So
Right.
pretty amazing to do what we did, and I hope that I hope it at least adds some punch to our bench.
Yeah, I hope so as well. And man, it's just going to be so fun. It's crazy how things kind of mesh together. Like we did the Rudy Gobert episode last week, and if the Rudy Gobert episode doesn't happen, the Rudy Gobert trade doesn't happen. Maybe Rob Dillingham doesn't happen in Minnesota. Maybe that never happens. Maybe we're not in a position to go and get Rob Dillingham. It's just crazy how the dominoes fall one after another, and like and not to get too crazy, but like what if we went with LaMelo Ball instead of Anthony Edwards and he misses 40
Or
games a year?
Wiseman.
Or
Or
Wiseman,
Wiseman.
yeah.
A lot of people
It's
wanted him. Another, I was just thinking while you're talking about more skill sets that Rob Dillingham has that is
yep.
maybe unique to him that other guys in his position collegiately don't have. But when he came off the bench, he also came off the bench with Reed Shepherd, and a lot of times Shepherd was kind of the point guard in that duo.
Yeah.
So Dillingham was playing off the ball a lot, with spot up 3-point shooting, coming off screens, all the stuff that Beasley did for us when we were there, Dillingham was doing for Kentucky. So now you're not only adding a guy who, at least in summer league showed that he's got some point guard chops, but more importantly, you're adding a guy that has shown that he can play alongside another ball dominant guard, like let's say Anthony Edwards. So now you've got a guy that can be running off screens and shooting, off balance threes, because that 44% 3-point percentage might even be quite a bit higher. Because if you watch what those 3-pointers were, a lot of them were like deep step backs or, kind of deep pull-ups or coming off a ball screen off the move 3-point shooters. It wasn't spot up 3-point shots for 44%. So this guy's got an elite trigger. So I hope that translates, because if it does, that's another skill set that we've been looking for ever since Malik Beasley left, is a guy that can get hot from the 3-point range and doesn't need, the ball in his hands to get that shot up. It can be, like I said, coming off a pin down or coming off some action where he's just catch and shoot guy. So all these things are all just filling gaps of skill sets we needed on this roster. So hypothetically on paper, he checks a lot of those boxes.
He does. And the one thing I will say to Wolves fans, don't expect this guy to be Lou Williams out of the gate. Give him some time. Let him maturate. Let him figure it out. Let him go. The first, and I pledge to do this as well as we're covering the team. The first game he goes, 1 for 9 and has 3 turnovers and maybe is a factor in us losing a game. Don't freak out. Don't lose your mind, because like you said, he's a 19-year-old. He's figuring it out. He took some time in summer league. Like, he could come out the first game and look like he did the first couple games in summer league, and we're like, oh no, we screwed up. And then he could come like a week later.
Will.
Yeah, there's a good chance. Yeah.
I mean, if you want to see what can happen or the progression of a young guard, go back to the beginning of this podcast. Scroll back on YouTube to the first ones, and you're going to see us talking about Anthony Edwards.
Yep.
And some of those first podcasts are talking about his poor shot, how he's shooting terrible from 3, and he has bad shot selection, and he's just chucking there's a lot of negative talk about what was happening on the court. I will stand up for us saying that, we all said that doesn't mean anything, and it shows that there's potential there, but it wasn't successful right off the gate for Anthony Edwards. And now, throughout this offseason, you hear people talking about the best shooting guards in the NBA, and Anthony Edwards is on a short list there with Devin Booker on everyone's mind. So, in a couple of years, who knows where this kid's going to be.
Right, absolutely. So it's interesting. It's a short-term play, but it's also a long-term play.
For
It's almost
sure.
like we believe in this guy long-term, but it would be great if he was good in the short term
We need
as
him to
well.
be.
Yeah,
I
we
mean,
we
it's
need him
not
to be
even
as well.
great. We're
Right,
relying on it. We don't have a
right,
backup point guard.
right,
Like he is our backup point guard. So
right.
we need him to be successful. And it's a lot of pressure on Chris Finch and Tim Connolly to make that happen. I mean, Monte Morris is gone. We have
Yeah.
no veteran backup. We might, I mean, I don't know if J Mac will be back on the squad, but
I
uh,
think I think he
we're
signed
going to
with
need it.
Sacramento.
Okay, well then, we need this guy to contribute day one. Joe Ingles will help quite a bit on that second unit as a guy who can help get
Mhm,
the offense running. But we're going to need him to be successful day one.
mhm. Absolutely, and I think we'll put an exclamation point in it there. Chris, thanks so much for being here.
Hey, it's great, man. I'll talk Timberwolves any day.
Absolutely. And this is the Running with the Timberwolves podcast on the Believe Sports Network. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe on YouTube and give us a 5-star rating on Spotify and or Apple. And in the comments, let us know what player we should do next as we ramp up towards the season. And check us out on Twitter at let's see, I got to remember what just look up Running with the Timberwolves and you'll be able to find us on Twitter. And as always, go Wolves.